Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop the kids off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Good morning, listeners. It is Friday, August 31st, 2018, the last day of August. The sun is out. I'm walking home from dropping my son off at school, and the weather is beautiful. We're definitely moving into autumn now, and I'm enjoying it. It will get hotter during the day, but right now it is lovely. I've been thinking about the way that I'm ordering episodes. This episode will appear sometime in the first week of September, maybe even the second. But I've been thinking about the order of episodes as I moved into the end of the month. I think I am, like I said in the question and answer episode, I think I'm going to try to do one regular segment a week and two episodes without a uniform plan. So if there are 4 weeks in the month, one of those weeks would be a what I've been playing update. One of those weeks would be a monthly statistics update. One of the weeks would be a Q&A. And then there should be a fourth regular one. I'm going to have to look back at what I've been doing and see what makes the most sense as a fourth regular episode. It might be part of the statistics update. I might break that into two pieces because the podcast is about 15 minutes when I record it on this stretch from dropping the kid off back to the house. It ends up being 15 minutes or a little more. And that statistics episode has gotten fairly beefy. If I talk about games I've been playing at all, and then I talk about lots of other things, I run out of time. So that might be it. I may think about if there's some other particular form that fits being the fourth regular episode. And then I'll have the Shooting from the Hip episodes and the Message from the Deep episodes and random conversations about issues in board gaming. All of those would be part of the unscheduled or uncoordinated sets of episodes. So that's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. I guess you'll already be into that by the time you hear this because I will already have run the statistics episode. We'll have to see what happens in terms of the Q&As, which I thought I was going to run this week, but I don't think I will. So that's kind of where I am thinking about the episode structure as I move into my school year, which is a bit more orderly in terms of my schedule. All right, enough business out of the way. A quick side note, I had a few minutes last night, or actually about an hour and a half. My wife was out of town. The kids had gone to bed. And so I was contemplating some solo gaming. I thought about it would be really fun to break out a solo game of Anachrony, but at the time, I haven't read the rules for that. So by the time I would have figured out how to play, I would have used up too much of my time. On the other hand, I have recently been reading the rules for Shipyard. I think that's going to be a game to play that's going to be a top of the stack in September. So I decided to try that out. So I played a solo game of Shipyard, even though Shipyard doesn't have a solo mode. I just set up two hands of it, and I played against myself, just to see how it works, to try out the mechanisms and that sort of thing. So I did log it as a play, but I don't think I'm going to count it in terms of taking it off my shelf of opportunity. I don't think I get to play a game by myself if it doesn't actually have a solo mode in order to remove it from the shelf of opportunity. But it was really interesting, and I'm excited to play it with other people. More about that later, probably once I've played it. But first impressions, Shipyard is fun. I was looking through my game design notebook. I have an idea notebook that I keep in my backpack that I make notes in from time to time. When I have an idea for the show, I put those in there. Ideas for games or early development on games. Creative writing work. Even a little scholarly work, although usually I do that in other places. But I keep this notebook as just a way of kind of keeping track of things I've been thinking about, and I find looking through it is a productive way to kind of return to ideas I've been playing with, or reinvigorate interest in an idea I'd set aside earlier. And I found a page from pretty early in the notebook that springs from a conversation I had with a video game designer a long time ago. It was a lady at my school had a G3 Summit, they called it, Girls, Games, and something. And it was girls, GRRLZ, I think. And it was about sort of feminist approaches to video game design and cultivating women in game design. This actually was before the whole Gamergate movement, but women being treated badly by male gamers has been a problem for decades. So it's not like it wasn't an issue before Gamergate. But I participated in this summit, helping organize and give talks about game design. Although I stayed mostly out of the way because we had actual professional game designers coming in and giving talks. So I was mostly there as sort of supervising faculty to give the event a little bit of cred, which is kind of funny because I'm not an authority on video game design by any means, but there it is. So one of the things that in the game development session at this event, one of the game designers talked about a place where you can find fruitful space to work in game design is to look for verbs that aren't being used in other designs. When I was working in my notebook, I started thinking along those lines to consider how does board game design benefit from the same kind of thinking. So first I made a list of verbs that I think are pretty common in game design. And what I mean here are verbs that are tied to the theme. Not things you're actually doing when you're playing a game, but things the theme tells you you're doing. Because I think the mechanisms by which we pursue the goals of the theme are different from the goals of the theme itself. I wanted to start with goals of the theme. So, kill is one of the most obvious and often used verbs in board game design, right? Chess is a war game. And many, many other games, that is the main thing you're doing. You're trying to kill your opponent. We also can envelop a lot of what's going on in games using the 4 verbs that are part of the 4X idea, right? Explore, exploit, exterminate, and expand. These connect to a lot of the things that you do in the theme of many, many board games. I also wrote out grow, eat, build, and plan. I guess eat is probably the least common there. There aren't that many food-themed games where you're trying to eat stuff. But I do feel like using eat as a metaphor for consuming resources as part of the routine of the game. The feed your workers model is something that has been around for a long time and is a key part of many game designs. And then I did a brainstorm, so some of these ideas are dumb, therefore I'm not reading them all to you, but I did a brainstorm of a variety of other approaches to the to game design that I don't see a lot of in other games. Now some of these things, some of my ideas were, I'm leaving off the list because they were physical activities. Like for instance, I have wiggle on here. To be fair, when you're brainstorming, the goal is just get it out on paper. Don't censor yourself. That if you let yourself go to a place that you can immediately reflect as dumb, like I have no idea why wiggle or how wiggle would be a useful verb to think about in game design, but perhaps that leads you to another idea that is better. And so I wrote down 6 that I thought were interesting to me. I wrote down love, research, distract, spy, investigate, and enthrall. Now I would say I can probably point to a game where all of those are the case. Love is probably the hardest, but there are a couple games that I can think of. Dungeon Petz has an element where you have to treat your pets well or they become sad. There's also games like Pursuit of Happiness where you're trying to love yourself through your game actions. And then the games And Then We Held Hands and Fog of Love are both about relationships, and a big part of it is empathizing with the other players. Research is something that we do see in some games, and there's actually games where you are actually doing the thing that the theme says. The best example of this for me is Alchemists, where you're trying to solve a puzzle to determine what kinds of ingredients make what kinds of formulas, and then you publish your research and get points for doing that, basically for figuring out which kinds of chemicals do what. So in that game you are actually researching as well as you're theoretically or thematically researching. Spy is another one that we see a fair amount. You could say that the social deduction games where one player is working at odds with the other player is spying. There's also games that are themed around spying, although I wouldn't say that's exactly what this is. The game Redacted is really interesting because it's got a mechanism whereby you're looking at what other people are doing and they don't know what you've seen. So there's definitely an element of duplicity there that feels like spying. The three that I have on here that I feel are less common are distract, investigate, and enthrall. Now, distract and enthrall are interesting because they are states of mind that you inflict on someone else. You distract someone else, you enthrall someone else. And so the question of how would a game theme be built around these ideas is interesting to me. I guess you could point to Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia, as having a distraction mechanism, because a key part of that is keeping your workers happy by, I guess, placating them. In the same regard, you could also say that Through the Ages and Anachrony both have distract mechanisms as well. Things where, like in Through the Ages, you have to have a certain number of happy faces to keep your society happy. And if you don't, then they start getting all mad at you and revolting. And in Anachrony, there's a morale track, and the way that you manage your workers shapes that morale track. If you continually wake them up without using the resource to wake them up gently, if you use the mean resource, then it lowers morale. And if you do that too many times, they start dying, which is funny, I guess. You're working them to death? That's not funny, but it does tie into distract. Enthrall is one that I don't know that I've seen that in a game, where the theme of the game is that you're enthralling people. I guess that's part of what I'm doing in one of the games I'm working on, where you have people that are free agents and then you get them to become part of your minions. You could call that enthralling. The verb I use in that word is seduce, and not sexually, but rather mentally. So those are a couple of verbs I was thinking about. What would a game be like built around the idea of distraction? It also sort of begs the question of what theme would go with that idea of distraction. The last one, investigate, I have on here as different than research. I guess what I see the difference is, research, you're pursuing a question to which the answer is unknown. And in a game, certainly the answer exists, like in Alchemists, the formula you're trying to figure out exists. But in the researching, you don't know for certain that it exists, and you don't know which result you're going to find. Investigate, you have a question to which there is an answer, and you're trying to find the answer. Things like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective or the new Detective, A Modern Crime Story. These are games that have investigate as the action. And again, in these, you're not only thematically investigating, but you are actually investigating, in that you're reading clues and you have to puzzle out what the clues mean yourself. As opposed to something like Deadline, which is an interesting puzzle game, but with each puzzle you solve, or each round where you succeed, you get a card that gives you a clue. And some of those clues are useful and some are not. But there's not much investigating to do because the game holds you by your hand and tells you which paths you can take. Some of those paths might be dead end, but it's not a sandbox by any means. So thinking about these verbs again has gotten me thinking about themes again. There are a variety of themes that I think need more energy and more effort. I've talked about this in previous episodes, and so I think I won't dive into that again now. But I'm curious, as you've listened to this, are there verbs that occur to you? What are some verbs that either you could actually do in a game, or that you could thematically pursue that would fit the ideas of, or that would make for a new gaming experience? What are some untapped markets in terms of verbs for us to explore that give us a new window into the experience of life, or the creative storytelling possibilities, other than the verbs that we tend to use all the time? Pop over to Guild 3269 and Board Game Geek to let me know. I'll be there along with our regular commenters. If you'd like to reach out to me, that's the best place, but you could also email me, Brendan@RattleBoxGames, or send me a note on Twitter, RattleBoxGames. That's it for me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Thanks for listening.
Brought to you by RattleBox Games.